Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Captain's Recap. I am your host, of course, Captain B-Nard, and today we are going to be talking about the BHDL4 Week 2. And here to discuss that with me, we have a very special guest, none other than Biradu, also known as Biradu from the Discord server. Go ahead and join the Discord server. It's the best place to go for Pokemon battles right now. You know the deal, right? But say hi,
You
Biradu.
had to do it, like,
I stopped myself short of doing the whole thing, but seriously, there is a link in the description down below. So, um, I wonder if only 36% of people watching him are still subscribed, or is it if it went up? Not sure, but because YouTube likes to unsubscribe people sometimes, it's a bit bizarre. But all right, I'm done now. I
super
promise.
bizarre.
I had to get it in since you're the guest. I had to get it in. So, but thank you for joining me. I appreciate it to talk about these big week 2 matchups here in the BHDL season 4. As the co-founder of the BHDL, you of course have a lot of stock in what happens here in the league, and you're still working your magic behind the scenes as the guy in the chair. So thanks for coming on to do this. Appreciate it.
Thank, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be in the captain's table, and I'm
Absolutely.
ecstatic to talk about the this week matchups.
Absolutely. So we'll waste no further time. We'll get started with the first matchup here on our list to discuss. And actually, the first matchup we're going to talk about is actually a week 1 matchup left over from last week due to a scheduling conflict. And ironically enough, that is actually going to be your matchup here, Beardo, as you take on Lazy Boy and his Sleepy Laxingtons. You of course, with the A, B, C, D, E, F, G Atacama Tyrannitars,
Mhm.
taking him on. So, when I look at your two teams on paper here, I actually feel like you guys are pretty evenly matched. Although, if pressed, I would have to give a little bit of an edge to you because I feel like on his side, he's got stuff like the Darkrai, the Quackleval, the Jirachi, the Ursaluna Blood Moon. Those are like the big threats that I see. And then on your side, of course, you've got the Iron Treads, Chi-Yu, Ogre Pond Wellspring, Azumarill. The Terra Captain Kilowattrel is nice, of course, and the Terra Captain Muck. But I feel like you having those key water resistances, especially the Ogre Pond Wellspring, feel like you match up pretty well um, against his stuff on paper. But since this was your game, I want to get your insight into it. What were you thinking going into this match on paper?
Yeah, so I thought I had as well a really good matchup. Both Asu and Ogerpon actually worked that quack super well.
Yeah.
We'll end up seeing that this squad did amazingly into me after the game and after the dust settled. And I think I had some good Pokemon to deal with Darkrai, which I thought was really powerful. But actually, what I was most scared of coming from him was actually the Petarant and the Ursaluna. The Petarant with the toxic chain ability and the fact that it could put me to confused, I thought was really good into Asu. And Ursa Luna, I really had nothing to deal with that thing. I had to get creative and use some Terra types to be able to deal with that thing and some assault vests as well. But yeah, I think the matchup was in my favor definitely.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I would say also you do have limited answers to stuff like the Pecharon because you have a lot of strong physical attackers, but you do have the Chi Yu, and that thing can take Pecharon out pretty well. But even so, if it's your only answer, then that's a problem. You have to have more than one way of dealing with something like that. But definitely fair points there. As now we will look at what actually happened in the game, and we will see that it actually was Lazy Boy that ended up taking the win in this one, 3-0. Couple of things that I noticed about this game because I did watch it is that this game to me, at least the early and middle, or I should say the majority of the game, honestly, was really all about positioning. So you guys spent a lot of time, I think, just jockeying for position, just trying to get momentum and just trying to, you know, keep the momentum. I feel like Chi Yu put some work in on your side, but then of course on the downside to that, obviously the game ended with the unfortunate Quackleval sweep. That thing is still a menace despite not having Terra in our league. Um, but yeah, like I said, of course, this is your game. So talk to us a little bit about what happened in that game.
Yeah. So coming in, I knew I wasn't bringing threats this week, so I had no hazard removal. I didn't have hat train as well, and I
Always
knew that
risky, but
if
sometimes
he,
necessary.
yeah, absolutely. And my two sweepers, I mean, my two wall breakers were TU and Salamence, both who are weak to rocks. So I knew that I couldn't let him set rocks, and he managed to do it with Jirachi, and
Yeah.
that put a hinder on my plan. And also, when I thought I had the game in my bag, I was using a scarf TU, and he had like I think 3 or 4 months, and he came in with the mouse hold also scarfed, which I didn't expect at all because that thing is always running like white lenses. And
Hmm.
he thunderwaved my TU, and I think that was the final nail in the coffin. I also didn't play well around Quokoball. I didn't save Asu's health and Ogrepon's health. So both those things were dead when he started to set up. So, I mean, definitely I could have played it better. I think Lazy Boy did some really ballsy plays on his side, but they paid off. He's been doing that all season. Eventually, it's going to bite him, but it's not yet. So he's been doing great, I think.
Yes, I've all fair points. I would agree with that. And yeah, as we're gonna get into Lazy Boy's other match, because as I mentioned, this is actually a week one game. Because Lazy Boy is pulling double duty this week. Got ahead. He had to get his week one and his week two games in this week. So we'll see him again in his week two game in just a little bit here. But yeah, all fair points. And like I said, I think at the end of the day, you try to game plan. For everything, of course, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just get caught with the Quacklevola. I do think the scarf mouse hold was definitely a surprise for everybody with the Thunder Wave, and yeah, it ended up working out in his favor. Sometimes I think in these matches, it's like it's a careful balance of you want the element of surprise, but you also don't want to go like too off the rails. Um, but but
Yeah.
yeah, um, definitely a solid game as
So
yeah.
one last point I had to make.
Sure.
All my fears were correct about the Ursaluna because I didn't have any switching to that thing, and I remember he switched it in when he was behind a light screen, and on my I think it was my mock who this week was special, and mock was at -1 special attack, so I was really afraid of that thing setting all over me, and I
Hmm.
had to go into Asu, who was the only mon that could tank a Blood Moon, and that's when I lost Asu, which
Yeah.
was my better counter to Quokoball. So
Yeah.
I think that was key as well.
Definitely agreed. And yeah, Ursaluna Blood Moon just an absolute menace of a mon as well. If it's allowed to set up even a little bit, it's a problem to deal with. But yeah. So moving on from that game, that's going to bring us to our first actual week two match. And our second game we're going to talk about today, and that is going to be the California Trailblazers and Pokemaster 88 taking on Abomination and his ABCDEFG Athabasca Miltanks. So, um, when I look at this matchup on paper, I feel like once again I think they're relatively evenly matched. I think on paper, although it's hard for me to look at Abomination's team and call him the underdog in pretty much any game, just because he's got such a strong core on his team. He's got the Fairy Dragon Steel core, and he's got the Fire Water Grass core, and of course the Great Tusk, which is premier OU power, obviously. Um, but yeah, of course, the Clefable, the Dragonite, the Heatran, Terra Captain Jolteon, Terra Captain Vileplume, just lots of threats there. But then on Pokemaster's side, of course, he's got that Meowscarada, the Iron Moth, the Skarmory, Terra Captain Hitmontop, some premier threats, of course. Terra Captain Alolan Raichu, the Florges is always a problem. Great special wall. Um, but yeah, so I think pretty even, honestly. I don't know. What do you think about this matchup on paper, Biradu?
Yeah, I think this matchup actually leans a little bit to Abomination's side
Yeah,
because he has really good walls to stop Chris's uh, wall breakers. Like Meowscarada can't do much against Keytron. Uh, um, Iron Moth can't do much against Heatran also. So
yeah.
I think he meant that one mon was key, I think, in this battle. And I think Al's team is really fat. I mean, how can you stop like uh, um, Great
D-
Tusk, Clefable, Dragonite, all those mons can actually tank many hits without going down. And looks like Chris definitely could have struggled to break them. I
yeah,
think Swampert was really good this week because it was a way to deal with both Dragonite and Heatran, and it did amazing. And the battle was really good. We're going to see that after we talk about the teams.
yep.
But yeah, I would give the edge to Abomination this week.
Definitely. Yep. So, having said that, if we go ahead and take a look at what actually happened in the game, we will see that it was, in fact, Abomination getting the win here. Just barely, though, a 1-0 victory. Very, very, very tight victory on his side. And, when I watched this game, the kind of the key takeaways I had, once again, I would say this game was a big, big power struggle. Like, they were both just, like, trying to fight for position for the majority of the game there. I noticed the Meowscarada did work on Pokemaster's side. The Chinchino did a lot of work on Abomination's side. But I think the thing at the end of the day that really determined this game was I think that Pokemaster Chris was just caught doing a little too much over predicting. I think especially toward the end of the game. I think if he would have just gone for some attacks, because there were a couple turns toward the end of the game where him and Abomination just kept switching with Meowscarada and Clefable and Iron Moth and Mousehold, and I was just thinking, or not Mousehold, I'm sorry, Chinchino. Um, so, but yeah, I feel like if Pokemaster Chris would have just taken one of those turns to attack instead of switch, he probably could have had it. But also, he put his at the end of the game, he put his faith in Meowscarada to close up the game. I think it was when it seemed like maybe Iron Moth would have been a better choice. But what did you make of the game, Biradu? I think it was just a lot of
Yeah,
at the end. It was a couple over predictions that cost Pokemaster.
yeah, absolutely. I think you had really good points there. The first half of the game was jogging for positioning, and I think Al did a really good job there because he kept switching between both electric and who was the other tank? I think it was Clefable.
Clefable, yeah, yeah, that
No, it
electric
was
put
it
in some
was
work
Heatran. No,
too.
it was Heatran.
Oh
He
yeah,
switched
yeah,
between
yeah.
heat and electric, and both complement each other really well. So he managed to save all his sweepers and his breakers in the back, so they didn't take much damage. I think that was really clever on his part, and I agree with you. I think this was anyone's game till the very end. I think at the end of the battle, if Chris let Mascarada die, the Tinchino would have died to poison,
Hmm.
and then he has, I think, Iron Moth versus Clefable, which is it's a really favorable matchup for him.
Yep.
I think Chris did pretty well at protecting his hazards. He brought both rocks and toxic spikes, and in spite of Abomination saying toxic spikes were not so good into him, I think that was a fair point. But they ended doing a lot of damage to all his sweepers. So, yeah, I think both played great. A little bit of overprediction, and I think a misplay on Chris's side at the end of the game that could have gave him the game, but that happens. I mean, hindsight 2020, as they say.
Yep, I agree with you completely. And I think when you have highly competitive matchups like this, it's just they're so tight that they a lot of times just come down to one prediction. Like either one little mistake or one over prediction can cost you the match. And in games like this that are just so incredibly tight and incredibly competitive. But yeah,
Hmm.
um, moving on to the next one here, we are going to take a look at. In fact, Lazy Boy's second game here of the week, pulling double duty, as I said. So we have him taking on, and his Sleepy Laxingtons once again taking on Brandon P. and his Piedmont Triad kickers. Interestingly enough, side note, they actually had to play for the semifinals of a different league in the same week as they had this matchup, which I thought was pretty funny. Um, but looking at these
Yeah,
matchups on paper, you see Brandon has that Urshifu Rapid Strike, the Cinderace, um, the Whimsicott, the Archaludon, Terra Captain Flygon, Alolan Muck, just some really solid power there. Versus you see on Lazy Boy's side, we already saw his team. I don't think it actually. Oh, it did change a little bit. In the form, I
it
think he
did.
it changed a little bit, and making the mouse hold a Terra Captain was one of the things I think that changed with his team from week one to week two. Um, but yeah, that was he made a little bit of a transaction there, but he still and I think actually that works in his favor having the Mousehold as a Terra Captain. But of course,
Yeah.
the Darkrai, the Quackleval, the Penchara and Jirachi or Saluna Blood Moon, just the Terra Captain Mousehold, just a lot of stuff to be worried about. Despite all that, though, when I look at this matchup on paper, I still feel like Brandon probably has the edge a little bit, just due to the fact that he's got that Urshifu Rapid Strike, and that thing takes, if it's Scarf, it takes out Darkrai, it takes out, you know, Ursaluna, it deals with a lot of Lazy Boy's threats. Um, I feel like the Whimsicott also does well into his team. But yeah, it's another kind of close one for me. But I do think I would, if pressed, I would think Brandon has a little bit more of an edge here. But what do you think, Biradu?
Yeah, I think the teams are pretty even. The changes that the transactions that Lazy Boy did after our battle to this battle are actually pretty good. And picking up that Flapple was key in this match to deal with Urshifu, I think, because it couldn't get the surging strikes easily because that's a quad resist.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Brandon even brought the scarf Urshifu we're going to see later, and as you mentioned, which was really good to deal with Darkrai and Ursa Luna, I think. But I mean, that Petulant man is super annoying for like most months. If you bring like a Rocky helmet item to deal with Urshifu, expecting a scarf, Urshifu is going to take a lot of damage. And I think one of the mons that Lazy Boy brought actually was rocking the Rocky helmet here. But I don't see a favorite between these two teams. I think they're pretty evenly matched.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So when we take a look at the actual results for this game, we will see that it was in fact Lazy Boy once again with a big 4-0 victory this time over Brandon. So Lazy Boy pulling the double duty, but making it work in his favor. Give him the props for that. I, looking at this match, as you mentioned, the Flapple, but I that was there. But I think Ursaluna and Quack did so much work in this game. So much work, took out pretty much the whole team between the two of them. I feel like Lazy Boy actually played this game very well. He played very smart in this game, and I think Brandon played just a little too recklessly, I think, in this match. I feel like he was just too reckless with a lot of the plays that he made. He was, hope just kind of making a play on a hope, which a lot of times, or most of the time I should say, doesn't really work out. So I think that was what enabled Lazy Boy to get in position for this big victory, was just the fact that he played very smartly, and I think Brandon just played too recklessly in this one. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, so I'm going to call out Lazy Boy once again. In the beginning of the match, it was like Whimsicott versus Pokeball,
Yep.
and I think Brandon there like made a mistake because he click trick and trick a choice card to that Pokeball when
Yep.
he could click a Moonblast and just kill that thing.
Yep.
And Lazy Boy just stayed there, expecting not to die, I
Yeah.
guess. And it worked out for him because then he got a scarf and Scarf Dog is actually fairly good. And at that point, I think Whimsicott died to a triple axel, and yeah, he was versus six, and that's pretty difficult to accomplish there, to overcome there. And I think, yeah, you were mentioning the choice card or Tifu, and I mentioned especially the Flapple because, I mean, those 13 strikers are really good into Lazy Boy's team, but if you are locked in against a Flapple, uh, we all know what Flapple can do with that ability hustle,
Hmm.
and that thing is terrifying. You get a one Dragon Dance, and in conjunction with White Lens or Choice Band, you can wreak havoc all over uh, Brandon's team, especially because he didn't bring the Fortress this week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. Lacewood played really well, and Brandon, I think I might think he was a little bit tired of these back-to-back
Of
games.
facing Lazy
He
Boy.
managed to win. Yeah, I mean he managed to win the other game which was for the semifinals of another league.
Yeah.
So probably wasn't like prepping that hard for this game. But Lazy Boy is the same. There's no excuse there. But
Yeah.
it definitely showed more on Brandon's side.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't do more than one league at a time, just because you get burned out, because like when you're playing highly competitive situations like these, you have to expend so much time and thought and energy into prepping well for a game. So doing that a bunch of times for a bunch of different leagues just seems exhausting to me. So yeah, and we've seen it in the past here. I have no doubt that had something to do with it for sure, having to cram those games in so
Yeah,
close
I
together.
mean,
Um, but you're right; they both had to go through the same thing. So, and it was Lazy Boy that made the most of that situation for sure.
absolutely. And well, Brandon really loves this game. He's been playing leagues like since season one. He hasn't stopped actually. We've all stopped out of being a little burnt out, but he hasn't, and he's been playing great in all leagues. He's in the finals in at SDA. He just won another league
Like a month ago, I
commissioned
think,
by
something like
Icy
that.
Dude.
Yep,
Yeah, so yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Agreed. All right. So that is going to feed us into our next game here. And that is going to be Scorpion's game, as he and his Leaf agents were taking on his arch nemesis there, Cobra, and his two cool Typhlosions. Side note: I think this was probably the game that. The entire server, if you poll coaches and ask like who they want to see win a game in any given week, I think you probably get about 50-50, maybe give or take a little bit on most games. But I think this game there was a unanimous consent in the server that everybody wanted to see Cobra win this game. I think not that it's anything personal against Scorpion, of course, but but Scorpion has derided Cobra's ability as a battler for so long that I think that we all just wanted to see that moment, like that satisfactory moment of Cobra rising up and getting the job done. But nonetheless, looking at this matchup on paper, I think that was going to be no easy task for him because, as you can see, of course, on Scorpion's side, he's got the Palafin, of course, the Zapdos, the Ting Lu, Cyclizar, Ogerpon Cornerstone, and that Terra Captain Delphox, Terra Captain Primate, Klefki, just a lot of solid stuff, versus into Cobra's Roaring Moon, Goldango, Galarian Weezing, that Terra Captain Dudunsparce, and Terra Captain Hisuian Typhlosion. But he's also got stuff like the Gyarados, the Amoonguss, Iron Hands, of course. But when I look at this matchup on paper, I have to give it to Scorpion. I think that he definitely has the distinct advantage on paper. He's got stuff like the Palafin, like once you get that Palafin into hero form, it does a lot of work to Cobra's team. Outside of like maybe the Amoonguss, but Ice Punch is still going to hurt that thing. But also the Zapdos just seems really good into Cobra's team as well. But what did you make of this matchup on paper?
I think it's pretty even. I think Korra has good answers to Palafin in the form of Gyarados and Amoonguss, and I
Yeah,
think a defensive Gyarados would have been great, but actually Scorpion has that Mimikyu, which I think is really good into Cobra's team. It
yeah,
stops like Golden Go. It stops Roaring Moon, which is a pretty important part on Scorpion's team. So yeah, both had really good months into each other. Like I could see like Gyarados getting away with sweep here, or that Iron Hands actually putting up really good work against Tinglu. And I mean that thing is hits really hard everything that's in front of it. So yeah, I think Cobra has actually a really potent team now that I'm seeing it. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think we were when we were looking at this team before, we did like it, but and I don't think he's made any transactions yet this season. But the one thing that was really a detraction when we were looking at Cobra's team was he has like no priority on this team aside from the fake out Iron Hands. So like if he gets behind the 8 ball, then there's not a lot he can do to kind of dig himself out of a hole if he gets in one. Um, but yeah, when we look at
Yep.
the actual results of the match, we will see that it was in fact Scorpion that took the win in this one, 2-0, pretty close game. Watching this game, I do feel like it was pretty close all around. I think Cobra put up a good fight. He did definitely give Scorpion a run for his money. I think watching this game, you do see like this game was a good example um, of just seeing how much effort Scorpion puts into these games. Because he just seemed like he was in control the whole time. I think like it didn't, even though it was a close 2-0 victory, it didn't feel like there was any point in the game that Cobra was like in the driver's seat, if you know what I mean. Like it seemed like Scorpion was ready for pretty much everything. That's what I took. Um, but also on Scorpion's side, that Zapdos put in a lot of work in this one. But conversely, it seemed like the Roaring Moon definitely did some work for Cobra. But yeah, again, like I said, I think this was a good. To me, it was a good showcase of just how much effort Scorpion puts into preparing for these games. Take nothing away from Cobra because he did a great job, but what did you make of it?
Yeah, so a little disclaimer. I didn't want Scorpion to lose, but it would have been pretty epic if actually Cobra managed to steal the win here. I think you're pretty right. Scorpion puts up a lot of effort in his preparation. I actually almost always prepare with Raymond and Scorpion, and you can see how much they think about little game actions that come up that you say, I mean, how does he think of that? And they actually come up. So yeah, Cobra was always in the uh, trying to catch up to Scorpion here. I didn't like this battle so much because it was a doozy in the middle between the Zapdos and Galarian Weezing trying to either paralyze the Weezing or confuse the Zapdos, and neither of them wanted to go down.
Yeah,
I think Scorpion managed to score like 2 or 3 kills with U-turn or full switch. I can't remember what people move the Zapdos was carrying.
yeah.
Um, but I think Scorp did pretty well here. I think Palafin did amazing, and Zapdos. I didn't think it was that good into Cobra. It was good into the Gyarados, which surprisingly Cobra let die to the Zapdos,
Yeah.
expecting like to flinch, I guess, with the Ice Fang. But yeah, I would have probably conserved a little better that Gyarados, knowing that it had to deal with the Palafin eventually. So yeah, I think Cobra could have played a little better, but he didn't play bad by any means.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with all that. Definitely fair points for sure. So,
Also, surprising that he didn't bring the Amoonguss. I think that thing was really good into Palafin,
yeah.
but he didn't bring it. Really ballsy.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think sometimes that's another thing to consider with these matches is that sometimes you really have to make a choice, right? Like if you're looking at your prep and you're like, well, I got this Pokemon and it's good into like these ones, but then I got this one that's good into more of them, but I need an answer for this. So there's a lot of balance that can drive you crazy, I think, trying to balance, having an answer for everything. Um, So that can definitely be maddening. But yeah, on the surface, yeah, it seems like leaving Amoonguss off was a little bit of a mistake. But yeah, definitely he put up a good fight. I know Scorpion is much more of a seasoned battler and draft leaguer, I believe, than Cobra. So the experience factor, I think, was part of this game as well. But definitely a good showing for Cobra too. I think despite taking the loss, an even better showing for Scorpion, obviously taking the win. Um, but yeah, so
Yeah, a little shout out to Cora's nicknames. That segment Steve is legendary, and now the drunk uncle is really good.
you had to
So
talk
yeah,
about segment Steve. You just had to.
yeah.
You got to get it. You got to get it in
Segmenta,
there. Yes, you have to. I
segment
trust me.
Steva.
As as uh as someone who always tries to get it in when they can, whatever the jab or the joke may be, I appreciate it. I do. But um, but yeah, so moving on from this game, that is going to take us into actually my game of this week as me, Captain B-Nard, and my Philadelphia Pidgeys took on Stefan and the Grand Lake Garchomps. So, um, I'll give you guys a little bit of an insight into what I was thinking for this game. So, looking at this matchup on paper, obviously you have on my side you have the Sneasler, the powerhouse, the Terra Captain Gudra, Scissor, Rotom Wash, and the Mudsdale defensive core. Of course, you've got the Indeedee for the terrain unburden, all that possibilities. Um, and then of course the Azelf sitting there, which is very versatile. Conversely, on Stefan's side, you've got powerhouses like the Garchomp, of course, the Hisuian Samurott, the Single Strike Urshifu, the Rotom Heat, Terra Captain Tauros, Terra Captain Diancie, Munkidori. So when I was looking at this game, trying to prep for it on paper, I actually did think that I had a pretty good matchup into his team. Mainly because it felt like the Sneasler just did work to this team outside of like the Munkidori maybe, or like a you know I don't even know what else. That was the main thing that I was concerned about, was the Munkidori when I was looking at his team, versus the Sneasler. But Sneasler takes out Hisuian Samurott, it takes out Urshifu, takes out Tauros and lots of other things, Diancie as well, unless it's like Max Fizdef. But also Terra Fairy Gudra looked like it put a lot of work into his team as well, so that's why I brought that. Um, but yeah, I certainly did think that I had the edge on paper. But what did you make of it, Biradu?
Yeah, I think you were pretty favored this week. As you mentioned, Sneasler looks really good. By the way, how did we manage to let Steph draft all those three first months? Those things are really powerful, to be honest. But yeah,
Yes.
Sneasler does amazing into those. But yeah, Monkey Dory looks like it's the only wrench that could come up to stop like Sneasler sweep, in my opinion.
So you're
I
trying
don't
to
think
say, I don't mean to
terrain
cut
was
you off,
good.
but you're trying to say that Munkidori could be the only potential monkey wrench into Sneasler, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Continue. I had to get it in there, but continue.
Yeah. So I think this wasn't the week for terrain because indeed it was really bad into the dark types. So
Hmm.
and yeah, you needed to outspeed that Monkey Dory. So probably Scarf was the best item to bring here. But honestly, if you brought Scarf, that Garchomp was terrifying to you. I mean, that thing if it's running a Rocky helmet, it's really good into Sneasler, to be
Hmm.
honest. But yeah, I think your team matched it up pretty well against Steph.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, when we look at what actually happened in this one, we will see that it was, in fact, me, Captain Beanard, that took the win in this one, 3-0. It was a pretty solid match, I would say. My big takeaways were, I felt like I did a really good job of keeping the momentum in this match. So that was something that I knew that I had to do because I felt like I had to, keep the momentum in my favor with what have you, whatever way I could with a pivot or just kind of trying to make the right prediction as you normally would. But I also obviously felt like the Azelf put in work against his team, the Sneasler, and of course the Gudra did work to his team as well. I do think I was surprised and happy that the Monkey Dory didn't show up to this match. that he didn't bring it, and that definitely made my life a lot easier because I feel like if he had that, that definitely would have been trouble for Sneasler and Terraferi Gudra. But fortunately, he didn't bring it, so yeah, that worked out for me. But yeah, what did you think of the game, Biradu?
Yeah, I think you had a really commanding game, to be honest. There wasn't, at no point Stefan could deal with your threats. And that scarfed Sneasler that you brought uh, didn't have any switching, to be honest. The guard jump, maybe, if he was Rocky Helmet, he wasn't. He was, I think, mixed this week.
Yep.
But you were able to click U-turn all over his team, and in the meanwhile poisoning them, and he couldn't do anything against it. He also decided to not bring the Monkey Dory as we saw. So maybe not rocking the scarf would have been better, but you didn't know that pre-game.
Of course.
Um, and I think his Terra choice wasn't particularly good, and the timing he did it wasn't that good as well because it was either weak to Hydro Bomb from Rodon Wash or it was weak to Thunderbolt or Fall Switch, being Terra Water. So yeah, I mean I don't know what I would have done if I were Steph. Probably bring in the Monkey Dory, scarf it, trying to catch that Sneasler, and bring the Rocky helmet so to make your life a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But I mean, those fairy resists are really hurt here. I mean, fairy weaknesses really hurt, and that ace off with the choice specs, I think it was, or
Oh,
I can't
actually, it was
remember.
Sash
Ah,
this
no, it
week.
was yeah, it was Sash, but you were running the
Nasty
Dazzling
Plot.
Gleam was
Yep,
that
and
thing hit
Dazzling
everything
Gleam.
for super hard. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, at
yeah,
the end of the game, I kind of worked myself into a situation where all of his remaining Pokemon were weak to Fairy, so it's just like, okay, just click Dazzling Gleam, you know. But yeah,
yeah. You know what's funny? You know what's funny?
what's that?
Seeing Stefan's team, I could like get in your head on how you prepared against him. To be honest, like not bringing the Didi, bringing the scarf on Sneasler. Yeah, it all makes sense now. I hadn't watched it that this way.
Fair enough. Yes. So, but yeah, I was particularly happy to take the win this week after the bit of a debacle that occurred last week. But we'll talk more about that later as well. But
Uh huh.
yeah, definitely happy to get this one. Um, but yeah, I'd take nothing away from Stefan in this one. But like I said, I think he was really behind the eight ball in prep on this one. And like I said, outside of bringing the Monkey Dory, and I think Rocky Helmet Chomp would have been good too. But other than that, I don't know what I would have done because, like you said, it just is not a favorable matchup on paper for him. So, um,
Yeah, so, but he made a lot of transactions after this,
yeah, he
so
changed like
let's
half
see
his
how
half his
he's going
team
to do with the new
actually.
gen. Yeah, half his
Yeah.
team, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what he does with it. So, but yeah, moving along, that will take us to our next game, and this is probably going to be the most fun game to talk about of the week. That is Anastasia and Team Aquamarine, our reigning BHDL champion, versus Emerald Miner and his Demolition Force. So, looking at this matchup on paper, on Anna's side, you've got obviously all the premier threats like the Dragapult, the Corviknight, Ogerpon, Hearthflame, Incineroar, the Terra Captains, Articuno, and Bellybolt are definitely really solid. Um, Versus on Emerald side, you've got obviously the Greninja, the Annihilate, the Metagross, and then he's got the Enamorous now, definitely an X Factor, the Terra Captain Bramblegast, Moltres, Sandy Shock's Terra Captain Lycanroc as well. Definitely some big hitters there. Looking at this match on paper, I really do feel like Anastasia probably has the matchup on paper. Looking at this, just simply because Dragapult, I feel like does work to the team. Um, I feel like her defensive core matches up pretty well with what Emerald Miner's got going on. Um, but yeah, what do you think about these teams when you look at them on paper?
Yeah, I actually think the match is pretty even. Dragapult, I mean, is an amazing one, but actually cannot deal with Battle Bond Greninja, for example. If it gets a boost, you either have to be a Scarf or you are a dead Dragapult.
Fair.
And I mean, Moltres deals pretty well with Corviknight. So does the Sandy Sharks. So I think yeah, Anna's team is really strong, but I would give actually a little edge to Emerald Miner here.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Good points. Good points for sure. Definitely both very solid teams on paper, no question there. Um,
Hmm.
but moving to what actually happened in the game, and like I said, it's going to get fun to talk about. Um, it was in fact Emerald Miner who did take the win in this game, 1-0, a very tight, very close victory.
You
So
mean heal Emerald Miner?
yes, I do mean heel Emerald. Actually, that is a good point because while I could talk about the fact that I think Anna prepped really well for this game, that was one takeaway I had from the game. Um, I could talk about the fact that I thought they both played the game pretty well. But I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room instead, which is the fact that this game, and not just on one side, but on both sides, I don't feel like I've ever watched a game that's had more hacks than this game. Like, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. And there were a lot of hacks against Emerald, but I think the majority of them were for Emerald against Anna. Just so many full paras. Just I can't even like. I was watching this game and I like almost couldn't believe what I was watching. I was just like, like what is happening right now? Like because I've had games like that. Like sometimes if I'm just like screwing around and like testing something sometime that there very occasionally I've had a game where it's just like every hack, every RNG happens and I'm just like what is happening right now. Like I think I might have even had one or two that I recorded at some point, but yeah, it's a wild thing to see like all the RNG. Like yeah, like I couldn't even count like all the RNG against Anna. Was just like I do you want to pick? Go ahead because I my mind is starting to short circuit just thinking about it. To be honest with you, and the reaction from Emerald when all of this was happening. But go ahead. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I mentioned it, but no disrespect to any of the coaches, but this was the probably the shittiest draft game I've ever watched. There was so much hacks involved, and I mean, it shows how good Anna's prep was that this game ended up being like a 1-0 because she had like three resist berries that all procced. So that speaks a lot about her prep and her game plan that she had,
Hmm.
and she still lost 1-0 to Emerald here. So yeah, I think there was a particular moment in which I think Sandy Shocks paralyzed after two thunderbolts. It paralyzed 2 months,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, I can't even remember how many instances of hacks there
Full
were in this game.
paras
I was I
everywhere.
was I was listening to you, and I remembered one game last season where my Tyranitar got frozen by a certain mon from someone. So
I think it was an
that
ice
was a
beam
little,
off of Gudra, but I'm not sure who would have had Gudra. Nobody drafts that
yeah, I think
trash.
it
But
was an ice beam, the
um,
first ice beam as well. So yeah, I mean, we all have these games, but
But
it's
even you
crazy
have
that
to
all
admit
these
this
hacks.
this game was like dialed to 11 over that. Like even you have to admit like I got to tell you like the full paras the I think there were some flinches at some point. Um I don't even okay, so I have to say this before I forget. I have never in my life Greninja came out in Gen 6, right? We're now in Gen 9.
Yep.
I have never in my life, and I'm not making this up, I am not exaggerating this, never in my life have I seen Greninja hit all five water shurikens. I didn't even know it could hit five times. Like, I legitimately thought it capped at three, because I have never, ever seen Greninja hit more than three water shurikens. Not once in the 3.5 generations since that Pokemon came out in the damn near 1,000 videos I have on YouTube in my own personal experience with playing this game, in watching other people use Greninja, in the infinite amount more of games that I've seen Greninja in other people's matches, I have never once seen Greninja hit five water shurikens. Never. And that was just like
Yeah,
and that was the deciding factor at the game at the end right there because if that Dragapult
yeah,
would have
I
lived, it would have been over for Emerald. Still, even after all of those hacks in Emerald's favor, in Heal Emerald's favor, I should say, because at this point, Emerald, I hope you're listening to this, buddy. At this point for your week 3 game, if you don't just like go back into full heel mode like you did after this happened last season or the season before that. I don't remember. I'm gonna be disappointed at this point. Like you got to do it. Like after that game, like there's no choice anymore. Like you have to do it. Like break out the sunglasses, break out the suit coat, you
Absolutely.
know, break out the voice, whatever you got to do. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. He has to embrace the person, that heel emerald that he has inside him. And he also didn't know whether Shuriken could hit more than 3 times. I actually thought that thing was capped at 3 as well. So yeah, I mean, the worst part of all was that Anna knew that thing was life orb, so it wasn't a loaded dice. She knew that she was getting hacked by that as well. So yeah, no, this was a terrible game. I recommend it for fancies, for the comedy of it, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't recommend it to watch like a high level game. I think it was high level preparation on both sides, but especially Anna. But the game itself was terrible, in my opinion.
Yes, it was like watching a train wreck. Like you just couldn't look away. It was awful, but you just couldn't look
Yeah,
away. Um, but yeah, so
absolutely.
Emerald takes it there. And yeah, what else can we say except we better see heel Emerald next week on camera. But I will say, I guess the last thing I'll say is Emerald made it entertaining. Um, just his watching him react to what was happening was awesome. Like there's that picture that I got is gonna be on Discord. I hope you guys turn it into an emote soon. Um, but yeah, so yeah, with that, we will move on to a much less lighthearted situation and take a look at our next game here, which is going to be, of course, the game of Raymond and his Mamoswine Doubters taking on De Best Not Really and the Piercing Poniards. Now, I use the term game loosely in this situation, as you will see, but I do want to very briefly just kind of take a peek at these teams on paper because, as you may or may not know, the game actually didn't end up happening. But when I look at these teams on paper, um, honestly, on Ray's side, you've got stuff like the Latios, the Ogerpon base form, the Terrapagos, Tinkaton, Mamoswine, of course, thankfully, finally. And he's got those Terra Captains, Lantern, and Blaziken. Um, and then when you look at DeBest, not really in the piercing poniards, of course, he's got the Kai Rum, as people have noted. I said it that way, but I will not change for anyone. There you go, Kai Rum. Um, and then, of course, you've got the. Yes, it's all about the comedy. But you've got the Gliscor, you've got the Hisuian Zoroark, the Empoleon, Low Kicks, and then, of course, the Terra Captain Hisuian Electrode. Made a transaction actually to grab a Terra Captain Flamigo. And then, of course, big walls with the Cresselia and the Pheasantipity. So, looking at this matchup, I actually do feel like this was kind of even on paper. I feel like, although I don't know, in one way, I think that Kai Rum could actually put in some work against Ray. But I also feel like the Latios and the Ogerpon could put some work in against DeBest. So I think this would have been a very interesting game to see, like a chess match. But what did you make of it on paper, Biradu?
Yeah, I don't have the teams like matched up here in
Okay.
my document, but
Yeah.
from what I can see and what I remember, Raymond was struggling to come up with something to deal with the best story team. So
Yeah.
yeah, it would have definitely been a good match. I think Ray could deal with the Chiron with that Tinkaton.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had a lot of months that could be problematic for Ray eventually. So
A lot of walls
yeah,
to
I'd
break.
give I would have yeah, I would have given Ray the slight advantage here because he had the Tinkaton to deal with the Kyurem and Mamoswine to deal with Gliscor, which both were really important for the best strategy. But yeah, we will never know, I guess.
That is true. We will never know because, unfortunately, in fact, it was Raymond that took a 3-0 forfeit victory this week over DeBest Not Really, due to a slew of internet connectivity issues with DeBest. Um, so yeah, it was a forfeit victory in Raymond's favor. So we'll never know exactly how that game would have played out. But we do know, as a bit of somber news for all you BHDL fans out there, we do know that this is actually DeBest's last week here in the BHDL4, as we all on the commissioners team had a very lengthy discussion with him about his internet quality issues and the prospect of him resolving those in a timely manner. And unfortunately, we all kind of decided it was best to go ahead and replace him. He actually was quite a big advocate for that because a lot of us wanted to try and give him a little more time to see if he could, make something happen. But he did not, being the trooper that he is, being the class act that he is, decided that he didn't want to hold up the league. So he went ahead and gave his spot up. So as a little bit of a teaser for next week, we will have a new coach in that slot with a brand new team. And but yeah, so I will say it is an unfortunate situation, but hats off to DeBest for doing the right thing. And like I said, class act, good guy, definitely for sure. And we hope he gets that internet issue straightened out and comes back to us in future seasons, I would say.
Yep. So a little word from me here. The best was one of the guys who was with us from season one, always lighthearted. Was really a writer. He loved to write about his battles, and I think he we could see the improvement from season one when he was like dead last till season three, where I think he got two more playoffs, and always a really fun guy to stay around and to talk to. And it will be a shame he's not going to be with us for the rest of the season. Hopefully he can fix his internet issues so he could be with us in future seasons of BHDL.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with everything you just said there. Um, And so, with that, that is going to bring us to our final game we want to talk about this week, and that is going to be the game of the notorious HIM and his Brooklyn Baxcaliburs taking on the team of the Legends of Lapras. Legends of Lapras. That's a mouthful. Well, that's not really, but it's been a long day, folks. Coached by Silver, not Silver, whatever he wants to call himself. So, so when we look at this matchup on paper here, we have the notorious HIM's team, and yeah, just the this was I know you weren't on the power rankings video, but this was one of the best looking teams aside from some key weaknesses. One of the best looking teams we saw, I think. You've got the Bax Caliber and Galarian Slow King combo, which is just a very, very incredible combo there. But you've got stuff like the Excadrill, Rabombi, the Terra Captains on this team. Like I think I've said a couple times now, I think this team in HIM's team has the best Terra Captain loadout of any team in the league, I think, because he's got three Pokemon that are all extremely viable Terra Captain options in any given game. So I don't know that any other team has three full like threatening Terra Captains. No offense to you and your mischievous Biradu, or to Brandon and his Pikachu, but um, but I think this team has just a great loadout. That Thunderous Therian, of course. Um, Blastoise can't be overlooked either. But then you look at Silver's team, and you see, of course, the Iron Valiant, the Alolan Ninetales, the Hisuian Gudra, and then, of course, the Glamora, Terra Captains, Umbreon, and Lapras. And then, of course, we've got that Joey Fontaine style Landorus Therian at the bottom there, bringing up the rear. But yeah, on paper, looking at this matchup, once again, I feel like this is probably a pretty even match on paper. I do feel like there's like Iron Valiant had the potential to go crazy here. I think into HIM, but overall, I do think kind of an even game. What do you think about it?
Yeah, yeah, it looks like an even game. Both coaches have ways to break the other coach's team. I think Valiant was really, really good here because it actually could deal very well with the uh, what's the name, Excalibur, because
Hmm.
its defense is not so low, so it could definitely tank an Ice Shard, for example, and it was good into Dragon Dance Excalibur as well. He was good into escadrille, I think. And yeah, what you mentioned is true. He has three really good tier captains. Give me a second, please.
Sure.
All right, I'm back. So,
No problem.
really good tier captains.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think Silver's tier captains are fine as well, but definitely uh, the HIM's team looks more threatening in my opinion.
Yep. I would agree. So, when we take a look at what happened in this game, actually, we will see that it was, in fact, Silver that did take the win in this game, 2-0. Pretty tight game, actually. Pretty close one. I don't know if there was actually an upload for this game. I think there might have been, but there might not have been
No, not
because
not yet.
yeah, because I know HIM. I know Silver doesn't upload, and I know HIM usually. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't, or sometimes it's a little delayed. But so yeah, so we didn't really see a game here. But from what I can tell, just by looking at the numbers and stuff, it looks like the Doc Spun put in work on HIM's side, and it looks like Iron Valiant and Hysuyan Gudra especially put a lot of work in on Silver's side because I think as I look at the results here real fast, it looks like yep. It looks like Hysuyan, the combination of Hysuyan, Gudra, and Iron Valiant took out just about the entire team on for Silver versus HIM. So yeah, so I don't really have too much else to say about the game. Just that's just kind of what it seems like based on the numbers. But what say you, Biradu?
Yeah, I'm surprised Gudra put up so much work here. I mean, it was good into Excalibur, I guess, and also into the Slowking Galar.
Mm,
But yeah, I'm surprised it got 3 kills. We still don't know how that happened. It looks like Iron Valiant and Umbreon actually didn't die this game. So if I can imagine a situation where Umbreon was really good at tanking hits coming from HIM's team. But yeah, I'm hopefully we get to see this game and see how Silver did
how
against
he pulled it
that
off.
threat that is the Excalibur under Snow, I guess.
Yeah, I would. If I had to guess, I would probably say it was an Iron Valiant end game. It just seems like that's what it was because
Yeah,
Iron Valiant just seems really good
yeah.
into his team, and Valiant is one of the last man standing. So, um, but yeah, with that, I think that pretty much sums it up here for BHDL4 week 2. So there you have it. A lot of goings on, a lot of happenings, some pretty high impact games. Everything from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. We got it all here in the BHDL. So, but yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this one here. So I think I will take this time to say thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and or subscribe if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. We're gonna have our week 3 battle coming out, as well as the next episode of the Captain's Recap. In the future, and of course, I would like to thank my guest Biradu for joining me here to discuss all the goings on in the BHDL for week 2. So thank you for joining me once again, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. It's been a blast. So, but that is it, and we'll see you next time.